Hey there, it's Shauna. Welcome to your weekly astrology forecast for September 24th. This week I'm calling Ambition and Grace will get you there because we have a lot of energy around these kinds of qualities, around ambition and having a certain sense of grace to get to where it is that you want to be. So I'm excited to share the astrology of this week with you, and then I have 3 tips for you to make the most out of this week. So we start the week off with a bang with a full moon in the sign of Aries. And so this full moon being in the sign of Aries, full moons are already a time of maximum feeling, celebration, and really being like in the thick of life and engagement. Like that's the emotional tone when there's a full moon. This being in the sign of Aries, Aries is also about engagement, about going directly into whatever it is that you want. There's a sense of passion and a sense of excitement. The interesting thing with this full moon is it is also square Saturn. And so this is the second thing that's happening this week, is that the sun will square Saturn, and then it will eventually trine Mars later in the week. But that's all tied into this full moon. So with the Saturn square, Saturn is the planet that represents the way that we need to go about things in a way that is like a marathon kind of mindset. So step by step over the long term. Saturn can also reflect where we feel like we have limitations, or where there are certain rules or restrictions towards what it is that we want. So you may be feeling that vibe this whole week because the full moon on Monday ties it in. The sun will square Saturn on Tuesday, but then the sun will trine Mars on Thursday. And so Mars has kind of an Aries flair to it. Mars is about asserting yourself, going forward, taking action. And so when the sun trines Mars, trine is a harmonious aspect. And so I feel like earlier in the week, it may feel like you're really coming up against resistance or challenge, or maybe it just feels like there's a lot going on and not enough time to do it. That's also a Saturn symbolism. And then later in the week, Thursday and over the weekend, it may feel like things flow more harmoniously. And so I think this week there's really a lot of ambition, and then a certain sense of if you can have grace through the process, that's going to propel you forward. The last thing that's happening this week is Pluto will station direct. And it stations direct at 18 degrees of Capricorn on Sunday. So Pluto is retrograde typically for about half the year. It usually goes retrograde for about 5 months at a time. It's stationed retrograde April 22nd this year, 2018, at 21 degrees of Capricorn. And so what this means when Pluto is retrograde is it means that the symbolism of Pluto is internalized, both individually and collectively. And Pluto's symbolism is around the birth, death, and rebirth process. It's about something that is outdated, that has been, that's seen its time falling away, and then something new coming in. And it's also about power, and the sense of power that can come from regenerating yourself, the sense of power that can come from having a dark night of the soul, that can have the power that can come from going deep inside of yourself and being very honest. And so of course that sounds pretty intense. It is. That being said, Pluto stationing direct, it's not going to be a huge very like hit you over the head kind of influence in the way that or you won't notice it as much in the way that you would a Mercury retrograde or a Venus retrograde, because it moves so slowly, so it's more subtle. I would really pay attention if you have any personal planets around within a few degrees of 18 degrees of any of the cardinal signs. So Cancer, Capricorn, or Aries or Libra. I would pay attention to that more for you, because that means that Pluto is more influential for you now. Or if you have Pluto very strong in your birth chart natally. So that being said, I have some tips for you to make the most out of this week. Tip number 1 is to channel your efforts. And I say that because we have Saturn and Mars active this week, Sun, Saturn, Mars. And so this is totally about channeling your efforts in a very diligent, very purposeful way. And you have a lot of support here because the Sun will trine Mars on Thursday. And so there's a lot of support for you to go towards what it is that you're doing, projects that you're working on. The more that you can be very intentional about your efforts, be very discerning about your time, that's going to benefit you this week. So channel your efforts. Tip number 2 is don't take things personally. So these transits that I talk about every week, we're all in the entire world experiencing these, and everyone's going to experience it differently. When the Sun squares Saturn, sometimes, or even a full moon, sometimes people can feel like more emotional, or there can be a sense of like being frustrated about the limitations, or being frustrated or overwhelmed about having too much to do. And so if people in your environment are acting that way, don't worry about it. It's not about you. Don't take it personally. Tip number 3 is to remember that you have the power. So I say this because of all of the different aspects this week. So the more that you can take responsibility for your life and your actions, even if it's not 100% in your control, the more that that is going to benefit you. So for example, let's say you have a job that you don't like to go to, or that you're like working on transitioning. If you're like, I have to go to work today, it's like, well, maybe you don't, you like literally you could not go, you could quit, you could do something else. Of course, that's not always practical, but at the end of the day, you are always making the decisions to do the things that you're doing. And of course, I don't want to negate that we all have things that we have to do, like, you kind of have to do laundry in order to have clean clothes, but you're choosing to do that. You're choosing when and why and how, and ultimately that's a good mindset to have for this week when we have that Saturn influence, because it puts you in the driver's seat, and it just feels more motivating. So those are your 3 tips for the week, and then I'm going to pull a card for us, tarot card. And I realize there's probably a little bit of background noise in this video, so I apologize. Thanks for being patient. I'm recording this at a different time than I would normally. So, all right, so you can hold in your heart a question that you have, something that you want clarity on, or you can just get into a relaxed state and let the cards speak to you. Okay. Oh, okay. So this is the 7 of Wands. So this is an interesting card. I like his expression. He's like, ah. So this card is about like feeling like you're up against adversity. Like if you look at it, looks like he's trying to like fend off all of the other little wands there. And there's 7 of them. So also relate this to Saturn being the 7th planet, the 7th point that we pay attention to in astrology. In traditional astrology, there are only 7 planets, and so I would liken this to like really prioritizing what it is that you're fighting for, what it is that you're putting your focus on, and to not get overwhelmed. That's what I would say about that. And I don't know, maybe you have a ton going on and it's hard to do that, but I think the more that you put things kind of at one step at a time, that's going to be totally helpful for this week. So I'm curious what you have to say about this card too, what resonates with you, or what speaks to you. What I love about this card too is like there's He's kind of like straddling this little streamway, and there's a ton of open sky. So that we could think of like as straddling a lot of different situations, maybe trying to bring two worlds together. That's just something that I noticed too. So that's your horoscope for the week. I hope that you enjoyed this. If you did, please share it with a friend who you think would appreciate it as well. And if you want to connect with me more, you can find me on Instagram under Neo-Feminine Astrology. If you want to follow the moon cycles throughout the week, you can get my weekly moon sign cheat sheet. I post that on Instagram, and then I can also, I have like a mailing list on my website where you can sign up for that. Also, if you are interested in astrology and you identify as a sensitive person, my course Astrology for Empaths is starting in October, and I'm really excited to do that again and to have some new and familiar faces. We're starting, I think it's October 12th, but I'll have that link below on my website. 6-week online course to learn about how to use astrology and to really live life as a highly sensitive or empathic person in the modern world. So excited for that. Until next time, I'm wishing you an amazing week, sending lots of love, and I'll talk to you soon. Namaste.